So I'm sat with Brodie Milner. It's a pleasure to sort of sit with you, man, because again, I sort of discovered your music through acquaintances and also online, where you've got this lovely vibe and a really cool imagery on your videos and stuff as well. So I just wanted to sit down with you and kind of catch up and put a name to a digital persona, as we said before we started. So first off, to start off, Brodie, how are you doing? How's your day going?
Yeah, good. Good. I'm sat here with a very bitter black coffee because I never can be bothered to make it good like all the people on the internet tell me. And I've just been doing some admin, just the usual admin. I saw a tweet the other day that making music is 90% admin and 10% actually making music, and I'm feeling that at the moment. So yeah, not too bad.
That's good, man. That's good. And I guess, you know, in terms of my first sort of encounter with you on a musical level was listening to I Can't Complain. And I think,
right, sure.
Yeah. And I guess, like, obviously, again, you're in the admin phase. You're about to release some new stuff as well. How do you reflect? I know it wasn't that long ago, but how do you reflect on those singles you were releasing last year? And, you know, and obviously that kind of journey you started on, and yeah, how has it been for you, really? Because you got a lot of you know, just a lot of attention off the back of those.
It was nice to see them doing so well. I had a sort of, I guess, a bit of a weird relationship with releasing them. I think just the process ended up being a little bit longer than intended, and I feel like the longer that you spend you know, working on something and getting it ready for release, you know, you sort of, by the end of it, you fall out of love with it a little bit, which definitely happened with the first three. Coupled with that, I think they're sort of thematic in terms of the lyricism in them. Like the first three, especially, we're talking about myths, but they always felt a little bit disparate sonically. And sort of with the stuff that's coming out, wanted to hone that a little bit more and make it a little bit more thematically consistent. So yeah, that's the sort of reflection that I've had on it. Is just that I want to, I guess, moving away from them being standalone singles and more of like a slightly bigger body of work that sort of interlinks, and the narrative is going across the songs rather than it just being like this thing that's beginning to end with one song. But yeah, I'm really glad you liked Can't Complain. It's one of my favourite songs that I've written, and I think as well that one was quite short to get produced and get out, so it's probably part of the reason why I still like it. I'm sure in a year or two I want to pull it down like I do everything else, but yeah, that's where I'm at the moment.
Yeah, and lyrically, so obviously, like, you know, I guess it's a straightforward question, and I'm going to put a little bit of a different slant on it in a second because I'm going to ask you another deeper question. But in terms of I Can't Complain and that track as a starting focus point, what inspires that? What inspires you lyrically? What experiences, people, places, etc. do you know, influence your writing process, musical process?
Yeah, it's sort of, I guess, so on that thematic thing, it sort of changes. Or I've been, you know, I definitely get a lot of inspiration from books and literature. I studied literature at uni, so you know, a lot of it sort of feeds into that. Especially the three first tunes that I released were all about myths, or Greek myths, especially in some respects. And, you know, I guess maybe earlier on, long before I was releasing music, actually, I was more interested in sort of like the I guess the internal experience and that kind of thing. And then sort of got a little bit bored with myself and started looking outwards. And look into, you know, the thing that I really liked about myths is the age of them, and especially with like a song like Philomela, where the content of it is quite challenging. It's, you know, it's about sexual harassment, and, you know, navigating that as a condemnation of the people that do that, rather than speaking on the behalf of other people's voices. But that the myth, the myth in that, which comes from partly comes from Ovid's Metamorphoses and partly comes from Titus Andronicus. Some of the wording out of those things are just as relevant now as they were then, and it's sort of like, that's the thing that really struck me with that. Just even now it's still relevant, which is really really sad.
Yeah.
But yeah, I sort of feel the fact that these books have been around or these poems or these plays have been around for so long, and they're still relevant, sort of speaks to the issue that they're talking about, I guess.
Yeah.
So yeah, it sort of comes from a bunch of different places, and that. But funnily enough, after those three songs about myth, and then I Can't Complain came about, I sort of went full circle, and that's very a sort of internal conflict about mental health and depression and sort of navigating that, and interestingly, it sort of set up a sort of lyrical style that I've gone on to explore a little bit more in the new stuff that's coming out, where there's this tension between very sarcastic and very sincere lines that are just next to each other in a way that sort of makes them feel a little bit uncomfortable. So yeah, I think, sorry, this is a really long answer to the question.
No, go into it. Yeah, it's all good. Yeah.
But yeah, they come from all over the place. I actually feel like writing lyrics is, I sort of hate doing it. I think because I've always found it really difficult, and I've started doing this thing where I'll try and write one line a day that's just like, that can be about anything, but just so that I've got a record of going back and being like, well, I think one is to get me out of the laziness of putting it off, because doing one line is such a smaller chunk than writing a song a day or whatever. But it sort of gives me a little library of starting off points to pull from, and often you can look back and things can be more interesting than you thought they were on the day that you'd written them. So that's sort of where I'm at the moment. I guess.
That's good. Thank you for going so in depth into it, Brodie. I really appreciate it. I think it's really nice to get a little bit, of an insight into your process. And you talked about Philomela there, which is one of the most interesting tracks for me as a listener, because it sort of displays quite a wide range of influences. And we'll talk about Open Letter in a minute as well. But you go from this sort of, really beautiful. It's all beautiful, but loud and quiet. The dynamics is what I'm trying to address is the dynamics that you go through in your songs, particularly that one. And you mentioned obviously quite heavy heavy lyrical intensity. Were you trying to repeat that with the sonics, and is that a good indication of the wide nature of your musical influences?
Yeah, I guess so. I think sonically, or definitely, for the newer stuff, and as I go forward, I'm pulling from a lot of different sonic places. So there's a lot of like really intimate indie folk stuff, like Adrian Lenker, and people like that. And on the back of that, listen to a lot of hip hop, which naturally in the delivery is dominated by the lyric, and it's in a lot of circumstances quite aggressive. So it's I guess it's pulling from a record that I've really been getting into is the new Loyal Kana one, which is he's someone, I guess, who does both of those things of I guess delivering stuff in a sort of really chill way, and then on the latest record it's really angry and aggressive, and it's like I think that's really good. I think it's just as much about delivery as it is the lyrics. I think the best artists sort of navigate that in a way where they're getting, I guess, you're doing it to get the point across.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess it just comes from a bunch of different influences. Is the overarching point of this?
No, it's again really interesting. Please do, don't worry about stopping yourself, because it's really interesting to sort of hear your enthusiasm for the stuff you're writing, even though you say you get tired of songs. It is that enthusiasm is there, which I think is a beautiful thing. It's
yeah. I mean, I sort of end up hating the songs, right? But I do have a lot of enthusiasm for them still. Glad that comes across.
Yeah, I think so. And there's a beauty in it as well. And that enthusiasm does come across in another aspect, which is the visual aspect. So when I was watching Open Letter, the video and stuff, I mean, it's very, simplistic in a way, but also quite considered, I would have said. So do you pay much attention to, there's these lovely like black and white photos of you out there, things like that. Do you pay much attention to the visual aspect of...
Yeah,
and I guess is it a dirty word? The brand Brodie Milner. Do you know what I mean? Do you pay much attention to that?
Yeah, loads.
Okay.
I think I guess it's I guess it's a way to feed my ego into believing that I'm more than just someone who writes songs and someone who also makes visual art as well. But yeah, we really put a lot of effort into, especially the cover art for stuff, and the visuals surrounding that. For the past 3 and the ones that are coming out, I've worked with Stu Baxter, who in Hull we all know and love. Lovely man, very very talented, and I find that we work so well together in that I go to him with... it's always really... Stu's been a really affirming figure, especially in terms of that brand thing, because he always points out, like, you're a really good designer. And I've never, it's not something that I've ever really considered, but he's very enthusiastic about calling me that, and that's sort of... made me feel a lot better about getting a bit more creative with the visuals and stuff. But yeah, I will go to him with a vision for something, and we will try. He will sort of bear with me while I direct him on some silly shoot for Open Letter. Actually, that's a good one, because the video is quite simplistic, but the cover art, we actually had to build a set in somewhere and then shoot that to get the thing that I wanted, and he's really patient with stuff like that, and then gets a good result out the back of it. So yeah, we spend a lot of time. For the next single and the EP, actually, we spent half a day in a theatre in my hometown. We convinced them to sort of just let us have the run of it for the afternoon. And we just played with lights and the stage and stuff like that. And when he sent, I think there's always 1 or 2 that he sends me afterwards, and immediately I'm just like, you've absolutely nailed it. But it's really nice. It feels like a proper collaboration together, where I sort of direct it, and I'm not good with any sort of equipment ever, so it's he sort of fills that space and and just nails it. I'm really really happy with Stu's work.
Yeah, God loves Stu, and yeah, I guess as an extension of that, visually, you mentioned books and stuff for your, for lyrics and stuff. Visually, what are you inspired by? You inspired, obviously there's a lot of stark colors and stuff in the stuff you shoot, but what are the visual inspirations you carry?
That's a good question, actually. I'm not entirely sure on that. I think I think generally speaking, it's more we tend to shoot a lot on film. I sort of like the unpredictability of it and how grainy it comes out. There's a lot of texture in it, and I think maybe it's because we're working on low budget stuff, and because it has this sort of otherworldly quality to it a lot of the time, which sort of separates it from I guess, you can take a picture of somewhere that you see every day on film, and you can sort of breathe new life into it with film, especially because because of the nature of it and the way that it's, it is a bit unpredictable. Is that you're seeing it in a different way, I think. But yeah, I think I tend to send Stu like every time we work on something new, I tend to send him like a little document with a bunch of stuff in. But where am I pulling that from? I don't know. I think I just do a lot of like just brute forcing stuff on the internet and being like, all right, well, I like this, but why is it that I like it? And then trying to find a bunch of stuff that's like that, and then failing sort of miserably a lot of the time as well, and having to spend a long time on it. I don't know. I'm not really a film buff or anything like that, or I couldn't tell you anything, particularly technical about the stuff that I like. It's just I just like it, and and I think like sometimes it's like I'll take a concept, and it's like, well, how is the best way to show this? There's the one for Up and Letter. I liked a lot of those. There's like a bunch of old photos of like writing rooms, and people like there's loads of photos of Bob Dylan typing away at a typewriter, and we wanted to sort of like make that a little bit more modern and add a bunch of stuff to it. Philomello was really stark, and it was just about this sculpture that my pal Christina Howarth had made, and just sort of making that the focus. I really love the visuals to Can't Complain. I feel like we really nailed it on that one. This theme of isolation, and then we go out and take a picture of like a signal station that's main purpose is to communicate with these ships that are passing in the night, and that's just a place near my hometown, and the way that we captured it makes it feel like it's on another planet. It's I really liked that one. I don't know really.
It's all right. It's okay. No, it's just an interesting insight, because I like I said, I do like the stark visuals. The other thing I wanted to ask before we sort of talk about Hull's inspiration is I wanted to talk about your voice. Now, when I first heard you, it was reminding me of obviously you have your own vocal, and we'll talk about where that comes from. But like I was sort of, it took me back to when I first heard two friends of mine sing. One is Ben Leftwich and one is Sam Griffiths from Howl and the Hum. Two friends from York scene, because I grew up in that scene, and those just again really beautiful vocals, but then also quite raw as well. And obviously I kind of wanted to ask you, like, where did you find your voice? Where did you find that? When did you figure out you could sing? When did that happen for you?
I think I think I'm still figuring out whether or not I can sing, actually, Tom.
Oh yeah, you can. You good?
It's. I think we have rehearsals every week, and every single time afterwards on the car on the way home, I'll say to my partner Daisy, "Was my vocal okay?" And I think it actually comes from a place of just not having very good singing technique, honestly. Like it's sort of quite nasal in a lot of ways, and I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. It sort of gets its uniqueness from there, I think. But yeah, it's funny that you mentioned Sam. Sam's an unbelievable vocalist. I've seen a lot of his gigs and been very jealous of of that vocal that he's got. But yeah, I think listening to a lot of I listened to a lot of John Martin earlier on, and a lot of Ben Howard, and John Martin especially has, I mean, a much lower voice than mine, but there's a real imperfectness to it that I sort of, and same with like Bob Dylan, who we've mentioned already. These are very obvious reference points, but and recently actually getting back into Daniel Johnston, and listening to they're not perfect vocalists by any means, but they've got like so much character that I think makes it. And I think if they were perfect vocalists, it would sort of suffer. The music that they make would suffer from it a little bit. I don't know. Yeah, I'd like to think that I'm somewhere in amongst those people. Maybe I don't know. I don't know. Maybe there's some pretty big shoes to fill. But yeah.
No, fair enough, man. Just because I think it's a great vocal you do have, but obviously it is yours, and that's why I wanted to ask about your perception of it. I think you mentioned obviously live and performing and stuff and rehearsing. Now, it was one of the questions I did want to ask you is what is a live show? Because I've heard you, but I've not seen you yet, and I know that you've done a bunch of shows. So how do you enjoy the live process? What does it look like? Because again, it's very centered around your vocal, but there are some there is some live instrumentation. So what does a live show look like for you? Is it an enjoyable process? Is it stressful? Is it easy to do?
Yeah, I mean, for a long time, it's been I've had a real love-hate relationship with it, where I think as well, like I've played solo for a lot of years now, and I think the past couple of those years, I've just wanted some company on stage, really, especially in some of the more trying times. I played a show in Liverpool to no one, and after driving there for 3 hours and then 3 hours back and spending the gig alone, it was just like, it was a moment of like, I really need to get some other people involved in this because it's just a bit lonely. So yeah, moving forward, we've it's taken a fair while to get up to speed with the full band stuff, but we're just about there now, which I'm really excited about because I think it's going to be. We've done sort of like almost full band where it's been there's been like sequences on stage and there has been like some live stuff, but it's not been like, it's been a little bit thrown together just in certain circumstances, and this is going to be like a dedicated thing, which I'm really looking forward to. I feel like in the same situation, or for me personally anyway, because I do still like playing solo every now and then, but I feel like there's times where gigs might be bad for whatever reason. Maybe they're like not very well attended, or you're just not feeling it or whatever. But if you've got some other people on stage, it can just be funny. You can just sort of laugh it off, and it can be like this bonding moment. And sort of feel like when it's just been me, all of those things that could go wrong sort of just fall on your shoulders by yourself, and it's sort of hard to share it with anyone. And I just sort of got a little bit fed up with that, and also there's a practical element to it, which is the work that we do in the studio is makes the songs shine a little bit brighter, and it'd be a shame to not have that in the live capacity as well. So
Yeah, no, fair enough. It just, it sounds like a really interesting experience. But I empathise with some of that playing in bands and stuff over the years. Just again, it's nice to have people around you if no one's there, and it's nice to have people around you. You have loads of people there, people that you, especially if you're out of town, if you're out of your home town. And that moves me on to my next question, because so I wasn't actually aware you weren't originally from Hull before this. Obviously, you are kind of associated with the scene now. You've very much integrated yourself with the Hull scene, which I think is one of the best in the country, personally, having lived and breathed in different scenes. Where are you from originally, and what do you think of the Hull music scene? Is it do you draw inspiration from it, and what has it given you, I guess?
Yeah, so I'm originally from just down the road in Bridlington, where lovely place, but couldn't live there forever. Like to visit. But yeah, and yeah, there was growing up there. I took a lot of inspiration. There was a really good folk scene around Brid, funnily enough, that I took a fair bit of inspiration from. And then, I spent a lot of time in Leeds and moved over back to Hull sort of mid-pandemic, I think. And yeah, inspiration-wise, there's a lot of good folk here. I sort of, something going back to Stu again. Actually, Stu's a real advocate for taking inspiration from your surroundings. I think that you can, or I've done this in the past, and I think other people have done it as well, where it's like the things that are really familiar to you, you can sort of end up wanting to get away from that a little bit. I think, especially in like when we do visuals and stuff, it almost feels like you're adding this separation. You're sort of making it, I don't know, almost seem a little bit more exotic. But then you sort of run the risk of discrediting a bunch of things, maybe unconsciously, that are around you. And there's a bunch of good folk around here, and they've been really, really supportive and helpful. And I think this is indicative of the North anyway, maybe because we're a little bit out of the way of the music industry hub that is London. There's now one major label in Leeds, EMI North, which is a really new thing. But before that, it's like we've got each other and that and that sort of and the sort of community things that grassroots people are setting up. Like yourself, Don. And I think, that because of that, people sort of look to each other a little bit more and are more willing to help. Because I think, we're all sort of collectively a little bit out of the way. Well, that's how I feel anyway.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we set up in York and then moved it around a bunch. Like we were in Manchester, we were in Chester, Preston. I was even in the US for a time. And I think that coming back to Hull was like, because I'm not from far, I'm from Beverley originally, but coming back from to the area was like, it was cool because I felt a real connection to the scene and the city. And I've loved Leeds. I spent most of my student days in Leeds. Great scene, but Hull really felt like there was this desire and this drive to do something, whereas Leeds had a lot. Leeds had a lot going for it, even though it was still, it still struggled in a lot of ways. But like Hull was like, there's all this spirit. There's this spirit, and we just wanted to. When I came back, I was like, I'm gonna lift the spirit. I'm gonna try in my own small way. I'm gonna try and be a part of that change. You know what I mean? To inspire people and motivate musicians and creatives.
And it almost in some ways feels reactionary to. I feel like the North as a whole, in a lot of respects, not just in music, but in a bunch of stuff, sort of gets discredited a little bit, and there's maybe a pushback against that. As it's fuel to be like, no, look at us, we have got a really good scene, and there is a lot of people doing really good stuff, which I think is as a driving force can only be a good thing, as sort of annoying as it is, because it means that people are really passionate about the stuff that they do, and I guess there's a little bit of stuff to prove from people on the outside, in my opinion, I guess.
No, I see that, and that kind of desire to prove something is pretty cool, actually, because it means that we never stop fighting. There's a label that's been set up by Casey Stead and a crew around sort of the hardcore, the whole punk scene. It's called Forever Underdogs, and I quite like that we are kind of in Hull. You're forever the underdog, but that gives you this drive to do something, you know what I mean? And obviously there are numerous examples now of bands like, and you yourself have, you've had thousands of streams on some tracks, but you've also got like Chadu, who's in the hip hop world, got his millions. You've got Life doing well, so you can do wonderful things from the city of Hull. But I guess people have this perception that the nothing can happen, but in effect there's loads of stuff happening, you know what I mean? So and I think you're go on.
But no, it's always good to to see people like Chadu, doing so well. It's sort of I guess it's like watching your favourite football team score a goal in the Premier League or whatever. You know, it feels like it just feels especially good because you know that it's come with maybe not as much industry support as other places, and because of that, it's solely relied on talent, and it's just nice to see your team winning, I guess. Is the
yeah. And my attitude was always like, well, if not me, or if not you, and if not Chedu, then who else? And if not Stu, do you know what I mean? If we all left, and obviously we've all spent time in different cities and lived in different spaces, but if we weren't here, then who else? See what I mean?
Yeah.
So it might as well be us. Does that make sense? It might as well be you leading the charge, and pushing other musicians to better themselves as you have been done by as you have watching the Howl and the Hum. You've become you've pushed yourself to be better, and you're doing the same for other musicians as well. And when you're getting streams and you're getting shows and people are looking, oh man, Brodie's doing really well, and it's not shit. That's the other thing. Fundamentally, you've got the two things, man. I always say to people when people ask me, it's like you've got to have tunes. And you've got to, you've got to have tunes, but you've not got to be a dick. Do you know what I mean? Like it's don't be a dick, have good tunes, and also know how to build a team around you. And I think that can be a band, or it can be a press agent, or it can be whatever. And as soon as you've got those things start to pick up. So and you seem to have built a nice little team around you, including Stu, the right people, effectively. So I wish you the best of luck with that, man. I do have a couple of questions left, some deeper questions to finish off. We joked about it before the stream, but the interview started. But I wanted to ask you about your tweets. I knew about you musically, and then I followed you on Twitter, and then I was like, this guy's nailing the sort of misery around being a musician in the north of England. This sort of sardonic tweets. Why? Why do you do that? Tell me about
that. Well, I think I said this earlier, Dom, is that when you said that you liked them, is there's this immediate pang of embarrassment because I don't think I've got many followers on it, and I've always forget that it's even a public platform anywhere. It just feels like sort of writing these little diary entries. But yeah, I guess like as is probably seen in some of the lyrics that I write, I take a sort of pleasure in writing about misery and sort of making a little joke about it. So I think it's just this sort of stream of consciousness that I've for some reason put on the internet, and every now and then get a bit worried about it. But I'm glad that you enjoy it. I think with some of it, I don't do this often, but every now and then I will talk about something that's sort of like a little bit more of an issue in the music industry, and I think we need to be a little bit more candid about stuff, especially in terms of being a DIY artist or people that are just getting into music and being honest about some of it. That it's a lot of the music industry is dictated by content, and it's dictated by money, and I think that's really sad for people who are just getting into it, who maybe just when I was getting into music, I understandably thought it was about writing good songs, and I'd still try and do that, but also now have an understanding. It's like, oh well, maybe the reason that I'm not getting playlisted on this thing is because I don't have a load of money to plug it, or I've got a full-time job as well as doing this, which has become its own sort of full-time thing. I don't have the energy all the time to spend making a TikTok following, and I think it's sort of, I don't want to be a big preacher on it all the time because I think people have got enough of their own stuff going on. But it's nice to sort of have some solidarity of them making fun of it. I think if you don't laugh, you'll cry. Maybe is the point of it. But yeah, I don't know. It's just that comes into my head, and sometimes I regret it, and sometimes not, and I guess it's just this running commentary that I have.
I do enjoy them. I mean, before we do the plugging bit to finish off, I have another deep question for you, because I am interested in, from an artist perspective, from a personal perspective, what does happiness mean to you, Brodie? What is happiness to you? Because again, you do talk about, sometimes you talk openly about mental health, and sometimes you talk openly about, when stuff isn't going well. So, and obviously, again, you've had a level of success as well with your streams and things like that. So I guess, like, does that make you happy? What is it that makes you happy, and how would you define happiness as an artist and as a person? And are they the same thing?
That is a deep question, Tom. I think, happiness is a weird one. I remember listening to this podcast. Jamila has a really good podcast called I Weigh. I don't know if she's still doing it, but maybe she is. But there was this one episode where she had Matt Haig on, that author, and they were talking about happiness, and they were talking about essentially moving the goalposts every time they would reach a sort of milestone. And he's going like, before it was published, he'd say to himself, if I just land a publishing deal, I think I'll be happy then. And then lands one, and then goes, well, if I just sell this many copies, I'll be happy then. And then sells that many copies, and then it's, well, if I just become a best-selling author, then I'll be happy. And then eventually it never is. And it really resonated with me, because I'm really guilty of doing the same thing, of always, I think, not things feeling like they're not quite there yet, and that I can always do better, and then I'll be happy. And I don't think that's how it works. And I was doing some therapy for a little while, and one of the conversations that I had was about being present. I sort of have a bit of an issue with being present. And just taking these little moments that are really nice, and having them define, what sort of, what happiness is. Whether that's like, there'll be, in the morning just before you get out of bed, when it feels especially comfortable, and just sort of like being present in that and just enjoying that while it lasts. Or, it can be whatever you take pleasure in, even for the briefest amount of time. But just sort of making a mental note of it happening there and then. And I think the more that you do it, the more that you recognise it, and the happier you end up being. And it's really difficult, because everyone's having a hard time, and I'm guilty of not doing it all the time. But I realise that when I sort of zone in on these little pockets of time, I do feel a lot better. But yeah, happiness as an artist and happiness as a person, I don't know if the two can ever be detached, because I've decided to make a brand out of my given name. So, I can't. I mean, I could, but my personal, social accounts are my artist accounts, and there isn't any separation between the two things. And now that we live in an industry where socials are so necessary to plug things that you're doing, I can't really come off yet.
Yeah.
Where I feel like, I always wish that I'd have either come up with, some sort of pseudonym, or just done it as a band project and had it be a separate thing. But I'm in it now, and it's fine. But yeah, that's
Yeah, it's a deeper it's a deep one, and I wanted to ask you. I don't always ask it that directly to people, but I just thought your definition would be interesting. You know what I mean? Like based on what you've been through, what you put out in your music as well. So I appreciate you being so open about it. You know what I mean?
No, I think it's important. I think we all need to be a bit more open. I think we'd all realise that we're all going through the same stuff, and maybe learn from each other. I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it was certainly, I think so. Cool. Well, to finish up then, the last question is the promo questions, the simplest one. First off, well, there's two strands to it. There's not just one promo question. I really should say. I should stop saying first off when I've still got a million questions. Rather than me sort of say, what have you got coming up? Is there anything you feel like I've missed? This is where we test whether I've done my job properly. Is there anything you feel like we've missed?
No,
you want to promote? You want to plug?
No, you've done a really good job. I don't know when this will come out, but we are doing a headline gig at the Polar Bear, which will be the first full band headline on the 21st of this month. So that's Feb. It might be a little bit too early, but I think that's the only thing that I've got plug in other than releases coming up. So there's a new single that'll be out on just before that gig. So on the 15th of this month. Again, might be a little bit too early because that comes out on like the 15th, and then there's an EP off the back of that, which I think we're planning to announce later in the year. But if people watch this and they've got a little, I guess, sneak preview of what's to come, I guess. But yeah, hopefully there'll be some launch shows off the back of that, and there's talks of a little tour in the back end of the year, but it's all so up in the air because I'm very unorganised and still have to do all the admin for it.
It's all right. It's the creative curse, Brodie, isn't it? It's the creative curse.
Yeah.
Unorganised and stuff. I get it. I've been tacking this on recently to interviews, just again as an end. I know I always come up with extra questions, so I do apologise for keeping you so long today. But I very much appreciate your time. And that is there something that for anybody who is listening to you, anybody watching this and discovering you for the first time, anything like that, is there any like a nugget of wisdom that you carry with you every day, something that you have inherited from maybe it was Stu Baxter, maybe it was another musician, maybe it was a family member, something that you have carried with you and you keep with you every day in terms of a nugget of advice or a life lesson or just a bit of knowledge to drop on us?
Yeah, I'm not a particularly wise person, Tom, but the thing that the one bit of advice that I try and stick to it, although I'm pretty bad at it, but it's the one that I would recommend for people who struggle with writing or struggle with perfectionism, is the thing that I sort of say to myself is to not let the fear of writing something bad or making something bad stop you from writing or making anything at all. I think that it's really good to engage with the process of making things, even if the end product isn't, exactly how you want it to be. I think that engaging with it is part of it. And I'm especially bad and especially slow at writing for that reason. And it's part of the reason why I've done that thing where I'm writing a line a day. It's because if I hold myself to such a high standard all the time that if it doesn't come out absolutely perfect, then I sort of have a little bit of a panic, and that can be a real blocker when you're sat with a blank page because there's too much pressure to get it right. And instead, if you just try and enjoy the process and try and not fear being bad at something, then the thing that you'll end up making is ultimately going to be better. It might just take a little bit more time. But yeah, that's the only little bit of wisdom that I have. I don't think anyone should look to me for any answers because I don't have them.
Well, I've certainly really enjoyed talking to you today, Brodie. It's been a pleasure. Questions have come up that I hadn't necessarily planned on asking, so it's been a lovely chat to you more than anything else. And I've obviously enjoyed. I hope that more people discover your music this year, and you feel loved for your musical output and many more things, because your music it's wonderful, mate, and I think you're a great example of what can be done from Hull and the surrounding areas. And I think your music impacts a lot more people than you'll probably ever realise. So I just wanted to say, yeah, thank you so much for your time. And legit, it's been a real pleasure, mate.
Thank you, Tom. Thanks. It's really nice to chat. And yeah, thanks for having me. I really do appreciate it.